Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back. I'm back with a special guest to talk about something I think we all can really explore and go a little bit deeper with and understand about ourselves. And this is the topic of today on overcoming low self-esteem to finding authentic purpose. And I think something that we're all looking for is a better understanding of our purpose and our reason for being, and, what makes us tick. And that's also what the soul is looking for too, for you to get in touch with that. I'd like Endre to introduce himself, and then we'll dive right into the topic.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm known as the Doctor of Self-Worth, and I help people to get back into their best version and creating results in business and life from usually self-doubt or those negative sticky thoughts. That's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Very nicely stated and succinctly stated. And I think it is something that many people actually struggle with. So again, our focus is around looking at overcoming low self-esteem to finding authentic purpose. And so tell me a little bit more about where this kind of low self-esteem started.
I remember the time when I was smaller and I was waiting my dad to come home. And it was survival. My dad had been highly critical. He always found some kind of faults, things that I haven't done, or I haven't done well enough. So I never felt good enough. It was difficult to be the son that could not connect to dad, insecure. I was hoping that I would get love and I never felt loved. I found my dad being quite angry, flaring up, arrogant and aggressive. His way of releasing stress was times drinking. It was an ideal childhood, and probably he didn't love himself either. Didn't connect well with anyone. So I was just one of them. But I didn't realize this. I was always seeing him as, as a father figure, someone I need to win his love. And it never worked. So eventually I started to give up. But these insecurities and lack of self-worth, low self-esteem started to drive my mind. And I became a high achiever from that place.
Because you're saying something important that I just want to get in there and say that you're making mention of, and this is what happens with the soul. So when the soul comes into an environment in which there is disavowing of who the person is, through anger and frustration and irritation, the soul is very sensitive. And it actually takes on this energy that the parent or parents are showing. And so instead of feeling large and comfortable in oneself, it shrinks and gets smaller and smaller. And in that process of getting smaller, you lose yourself because the soul becomes more fragmented. It's not sure what to do or how to do it. Is that on target, would you say? Or a little bit, how would you describe that?
Very insightful, because from that point when I lost myself, probably as a 4, 5, 6-year-old, I've been proving myself for the next 40 years in my life. And I didn't even know. And even after I moved on and I moved out from my parents, I was still on this, I call it with the mind vibes I was carrying. not good enough mind wires, the self-doubts. And each situation I was looking for comparing myself and showing that I can't perform, I'm good enough. But whenever I made a mistake, or I always felt my dad, hovering over me. And he was excellent at, let's say, squashing people's self-worth. And then I told you so type punishing behavior. And that takes people into this downward spiral, losing more and more of initiative, trying, and the belief to perform. So unknowingly, he has been a very disempowering person.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think parents don't understand their impact sometimes on the children, especially if that child is very sensitive. And because that sensitivity level actually creates a sense that I'm going to be hurt and I need to protect myself. And when we don't realize we protect ourselves by putting layers up to try to protect ourselves. And we also don't realize by being an immersion in that experience, what happens for the soul is it takes on some of these qualities that you're mentioning. And in the process of taking on the qualities, sometimes you're aware of them, sometimes you're not aware of them until something comes up. And then you realize, that's my father. I don't want to be like him. And so, up until the age of 12, we all are being imprinted in many ways through the experiences and even into the teenage years. And what happens is once we leave the home, we now have the opportunity to say, do I want to still be that way? Or do I want to be a little bit different? Or what's life experiences trying to teach me and show me? Because the soul, its ultimate purpose of being on planet Earth is to grow, is to learn, is to advance.
Yes, it's so true. And out of this experience, I had this programming to show how strong I was at all costs, and shutting down emotion. That has become the pattern because I was not allowed to express myself toward my dad because he was not listening. He was an expressive person, at times physically abusive, but mostly emotionally. So I ended up in my own headspace where you cannot win. Mm-hmm. That's a very limited space, little space for soul to exist from.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because it's in that shrinking process, we don't realize we're taking out of the criticism, which I talked about in previous episodes, a criticism, condemnation, and judgment. We take it on in ourselves. And it does come out in terms of interactions with other individuals too, but we're not realizing how much we have taken on this because our goal is to get away, but we're not realizing when we're trying to get away, we have the shadow following us. That shadow is the criticism, condemnation, and judgment, and not knowing what to do with it. Then we just try to do the best. We try to be perfection. We try to be good at what we do and whatever. And I hear that coming out. And then also what happens is when things don't work out, they're really hard on ourselves, extremely hard on ourselves, which is then we're hard on our soul and not knowingly.
It's spot on. And for the next 30 years, I carried these very high expectations to perform. And I felt triggered every time when I only made it to second, or someone found a fault or I made a mistake. That was a big trigger for me. And I've done a full circle, I have to say. At the age of 43, I realized running away from Central Europe to as far as I can from my dad, and living in New Zealand and Australia and having 2 children, I realized as a dad with 2 children, I am beating myself up. I had these voices in my head. I hated myself. I hated the commitments. I even hated my wife to have these kids who are now almost forcing me to having to work hard. It all came from that low self-esteem where I believe that I have to work hard. I have to struggle to make ends meet. So there has been quite a package of these limitations in my baggage. And unfortunately, I think this was the biggest learning for me, that after running away and trying to do the opposite things for 30 years, I became exactly the dad I never wanted to have. And that's who I became towards my children. I was working 24/7. I was launching a side hustle to break out of the job. I didn't get results. And it's got to the point that my wife asked me 6 years ago that, is it time for us to divorce? Because you are not here mentally, only physically. You're always sleeping or working your 12 hours and you're doing the home business that you're telling us that that's the breakout. And we are not believing in you anymore.
That is so true. What you're talking about is that not only did we now become the parent that we didn't want to become, which I haven't thought about that too, but we also, now that we have children, it's like, oh my God, am I mirroring what my dad would do to my kids and maybe to your mother? And now I have to make a choice because she's putting a choice before me. Do I want to be different, or you would continue to be the same? Because we want you. We want the essence of who you are. We want the love of who you are. We don't like this other stuff, these outer layers. With that being said, there's this issue that I talk about in other episodes around the ego persona. And the ego persona it compares, wants to do it perfect, wants to be in the limelight, wants to say, look at me, I'm doing a great job, right? There's so many different ways, but the ego persona becomes the captain of your ship and not your soul. And so when the ego persona becomes the captain of the ship, then when it's being critical or feeling being criticized towards, it attacks. No, get off my boat. I'm the captain of this ship. And what we're learning how to do is to discern between, okay, and this is what life experiences teaches us. Okay, I'm seeing I don't need that anymore. I've got to find out something else. I've got to make a different choice, and therefore I'm willing to change the epigenetics of this pattern that has occurred in the family from generation to generation. I'm willing to become more conscious and intentional to make some shifts and changes.
That's intergenerational is the massive one. I started to discover that my grandfather was an alcoholic, an aggressive one. So to compensate that, my grandfather, he started to live a life of rules around everything. So he's not running into obviously addiction. And then my dad and my grandfather had these anger patterns run. My dad was disowned and kicked out of the family. They never get along quite well. And I arrived into this, what I call this, a mess of these two people, but they never showed their emotions. They never showed appreciation. They would never say, I love you. So it's almost like emotions were not allowed. Congratulations. These were missing words from their vocabulary. So I always worked hard to get that appreciation, and I never got it. So probably I have taken on a lot of these things. But as you said, life is really teaching us. And probably the biggest and the last straw in my transformation was when my son, who was 8 years old at the time, have showed signs of lack of trusting his teammates, and he was playing soccer. And he was telling me, help me, Dad, because he was not able to score in the whole season. And that was really strange because he was one of the most skilled players. And I needed to then carry myself to my mentor, again, a mindset coach, someone who is seeing reflection. I mean, his question was to me, is his father's scoring goals in life? And I had to look at myself under the microscope, and I realized I was stuck in a job. I hated myself. I hated what I did. And I needed to take on a leadership position to communicate who I am, probably launch this brand, the Doctor of Self-Worth, which is exactly what happened. And within a year, and see my son reflecting that trust towards the teammates, scoring 5 or 6 goals and stepping into his power and leadership.
So he saw changes in you that was taking place in your interactions and in your mindset, your attitude and your approach to life. And kids absorb things. Kids observe it, and they don't necessarily translate saying, well, what my dad's doing, I'm doing. As a parent should have the greater sense of that. I'm seeing a parallel here if there's an alertness and awareness to it that's taking place. And the other piece that I just want to make mention of and get your thoughts about is this notion of when we wall off our emotions, which is a transgenerational pattern that you're talking about. And the walling off of our emotions, we don't realize we're walling off our soul and our sensitivities. And when we have a greater sense of ourself, which is sometimes we can feel the sense of hollowness. We don't realize we're trying to feel it with different things and activities that we do, but we don't realize it's because we are not in touch with our feelings. And it's our feelings are in touch with our soul. And our soul gives us the promptings and the intuitions of what we need to do and helps to try to guide us in some ways. What are your thoughts about that?
Probably I have not heard half of the question, because then you said that hollowness, that empty space, is what I've been trying to fill up for 20 years before with no success. And let's say some success that's seen as success from outside. I traveled 75 countries. I went into different therapies and hundreds and hundreds of books about psychology, personal development. I spent over $100,000 on courses, Anthony Robbins, John DeMartini, Millionaire Mind, T. Harv Eker, to work this out and to become someone, because probably I was coming from this lack that I'm a nobody. And on the outside, people see me as the most successful person. Yet inside, insecurities, doubt, put my soul away or eating myself away, where I just didn't feel good in my skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is what happens for individuals, and where you get lost. I think sometimes here's what you're kind of referring to. And getting lost is as if we don't know which direction to go in. We don't have a compass, to help to guide us through until we ask, and either consciously or subconsciously, help me. Because what happens is, because of former experiences that we have, what the soul is looking for is comfort, value. And if we're not giving it to ourselves, then who's going to give it to us? That's one thing. And the other aspect of what you're talking about is you had to hit kind of a final wall. The courses didn't do it. The self-help books didn't do it. So I have to go a little bit more deeper inside myself and look at how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, how I'm reacting, what's going on here, and what are some things I need to throw out that are old. It's not serving me in any way. And that is what the soul is wanting you to do. It's wanting you to have discernment and to say, this is not helping us. What is going to help us get truly in contact with our higher self, which I call the I am presence, the creator, the Atman, whatever people want to call it, plugging into something greater than ourselves that exists within, exists in nature, exists around us. But we're not so focused always externally. It's got to be out there somewhere. But as my mother would say, your acre of diamonds is your own backyard. Look in your own backyard for what you're looking for.
My wife and my children, because I think I needed that crisis to have 100% commitment to change, to have no plan B or C anymore. And I was chasing money before because that was my map to feeling safe. And that shifted at that point. I realized, looking back, money would not matter, but how I was seen to change this generational trauma as a father, that would be much more meaningful for future generations through this family. But also, I don't need to suffer through working at a job which is not meaningful, is not helping anyone other than my family and earning money. And at that point, I believe within 3 or 6 months, I found this mindset, especially to mindset coach, and working with him has recalibrated, rewritten.
So what do you think is the key thing that the mindset coach did that allows you to feel that it transformed me?
Well, what it needed is to have a different meaning to things that happened in the past. And there has been, as I said, different kind of situations and abuse and the negative emotions, which I call the glue, who that was holding all of this baggage in place. And unfortunately, the baggage that we don't want to look at or look into, that has a very tight lid, is usually running our lives. And that baggage has to be empty. It has to go. It has to let go. But then the story has to change. I needed to understand my dad was not a god. It was just a wounded person with his own psychological problems and fear and aggressivity and all of his own problems. And I needed to look at those events and situations from another point of view and to learn from it, but really learn who I am or I was outside of those old stories. And as we know, the mind can only process about 1% of what's going on. So I needed to look at the 99% what happened in those situations to learn something new about me, that authenticity, the authentic self who I probably was, and I did not remember.
Yeah, how true. Because of these layers of this stuff, it keeps us kind of bound in many regards to the trueness of the authenticity of who we really are. And so it's like you reframed it. You looked at a different perspective. It's like going up in an elevator and looking at a higher level than on ground level about what's going on here, so that it allows you to reorient, is what I hear, reorient to your life, and also seeing the strength and the beautiful things that you bring into life as well.
Yes, I agree. And this is how most of my work as well is discovering who the person has been before. Let's say things went bad, per se. Really go back to that children self, or the child who was soul playing around, enjoying the earth plane. And I think that is the work. That's the inner work, to again become curious, to enjoy, and back to the present moment, having fun and contributing.
Oh, true. You said that very nicely, because the soul wants playfulness and lightness. The soul does want to be curious and intriguing and have this curiosity for life and for meaning and for direction and for purpose and looking through that. But it sometimes just gets squashed like a flower. And now the flower's still there, that it's just under this whole heavy weight, that now you're trying to take those layers or that rock off that flower so it can continue to evolve and grow and expand itself. It's not to say that you're going to continue to have experiences and life things that are going to trigger or to activate certain feelings, but now you have mastery. You have more control. You're learning how to do what you need to do when you need to do it, because you're more now in touch with that feeling of who you are, which has also been more in touch with the soul of who you are.
Yes, and it's undoing the negative programming. In my mind's eye, I always saw myself as putting more and more chains on myself, giving away my power to these events, then shutting down the emotions. It's almost like all of these negative emotions has been locked up, and I thrown away the key, and I made sure I didn't even remember that I have locked my emotions and my true self away so far, so I never had to look at it because
Because it was painful.
probably, or, or let's say I was not allowed to be me because I had this triggering, limited person around. And I hate to say this, but it was not ecological. It was not evolutionary supported. I had to fit in to this impossible frame so I can have some level of peace. I am close like that. And in some way I can feel safe, because if I was soul energy, would have created a lot of problems with my dad.
Yeah. And the analogy that came to my mind when you were saying there was a straitjacket. It's like you're being put in a straitjacket. That you've kind of you got to conform to whatever the straitjacket you're in, which is very oppressive in some ways. But then I think of the other flip side, because to every experience that the soul goes through, there's some value of going through that experience. It's something that the soul wanted to learn from that experience, be it small or be it great. What do you think about that?
I believe we have an amazing journey, and I'm not too sure if everyone here believes in reincarnation, but I have this wonderful concept or theory about, well, what if we are just with no memories, almost as if it was a virtual experience we launched into life, then we are being challenged by certain situations, and there is this amazing game to find out who we are. And the keys, almost like in a video game, are left around with small signs and cues.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will never work it out. And some of us will not give up, will be asking questions, self-reflecting, and looking for experts and the people who might be able to help us and give us direction. Again, is knowing ourselves when we started this whole beautiful journey.
I do resonate with what you're saying. I think the soul does live on, and it lives in different embodiments that is taken to learn certain experiences, going into certain families to be able to learn certain experiences from that. And whether our listeners believe that or not, we'll leave that to them. But what happens with the soul does have the memory. And so our outer consciousness may not, but the soul knows what it needs. And it also knows how to heal itself as well if we give it the space and the opportunity through mindset, through understanding old feelings versus new feelings, understanding that these are memories and they don't have to attack us any longer, that we can put them in perspective and reframe the things so that we are able to move past and not get hindered by the past and stay there.
It's a really good point. And I believe everyone gets their reflections and recognition of what happened. But my understanding is that life with you, before that, they will all see what they may have missed, or what the truth was all along, that it was a wonderful journey and a setup on a stage. And some of us will be, let's say, more proactive, probing, looking behind the veil to find out the truth, almost like Neo in the Matrix, really going deeper and find the answers. But if you look at the big picture, this would not work. If we know exactly who we were or who we are, then this would not be so much fun. Because you would say, oh, Daddy, just stop this. It's a really bad. Give up that role. Just behave who you really are. It would be real. But because it feels real, even the body feels real. You really believe that, oh, I'm Endre Hoffmann, this tiny little person from Central Europe who has good 50, 60, 80 years, and then it's over. That's very limited view. then of course we have all this fear, I can't make a mistake, because then I'm wasting all my resources, then I'm running out of time and space, and I'm done. But it's not true.
Mhm. Mhm.
The truth really sets us free to be more inquiring, more play, giving
Mhm.
ourselves a chance.
Yeah, and that exploration is important. My mom used to say, and the truth will set you free. And she says, from what? Ignorance, ignoring of the laws that exist. And I said, oh, yes, Mom, that's so very, very true. And so we get these wise statements that are said that help us to understand that we're looking for truth. We're looking for a greater understanding of what's going on. But there's something you said earlier that I wanted to chime in on. And that was related to reincarnation and why we're here. And also the fact that there is more to life than what meets the eye. And what I want to get your thoughts about this, because I think we came to planet Earth and our souls came to planet Earth in order to be co-creators with God. So God said, you have free will. You can learn, go the high road or the low road or the side road, whatever road you want to go. It's up to you. But when you really want to understand that authenticity of who you really are, you got to go back to first cause, which is God. It is the I am presence or the creator or whatever word you want to use, but it is helping you to understand that your thoughts, your feelings create certain actions. And you're the co-creator of this. Therefore, you also can change these things as well.
Now, imagine if, let's say, we're coming from the non-material and we have abundance before we have our amazing journey down here on Earth. Now, to have all that abundance and co-creation all clicked and worked out, like where's the game? How much more meaningfully are thrown into challenging, at times painful, even experiences, and then find our way out of it to really learn who we are through this dichotomy. I think that's where the power is, and probably soul loves to play. And I know maybe some of you are listening to us, how painful experiences you have gone through. If you change the perspective, then what you might find, not and the human looking at this from the perspective of the soul, the most exciting journey to experience a full spectrum of pain and struggle, even abuse, and even at most extreme, to then come through it and understand it was a wonderful game, almost like Truman Show.
Yeah. I think the challenge, especially when there's trauma that's occurring, and maybe severe trauma, because it feels so real to what the person is going through, and it feels so painful, and we get stuck there. And then what you're talking about is, how do you make that shift so that when you're making the shift and you're in attunement with your soul, in attunement with your life path, you now see things from a different vantage point, a different way. So it sometimes begins to dissolve some of that past pain, because you know that under that pain, there was some gold. There were certain learning experiences that you were able to garner and take like nuggets from that experience and to move forward and not get stuck, in the past.
My approach is remembering, is helping everyone to remind themselves who they really were, who they really are. And I believe I need to sometimes point out the earliest years in their lives, and at times even invite their imagination, and at times exploring previous lives or generations to just go before all this trouble and struggle and trauma and pain, because they need to be able to see it from above, as you said, from the 10th floor, to see those events that had led to the identity, the victim that they are today. but it's not
But
the true self. It's never been.
right, right. And I think to tie into that, we have some of these experiences that kind of flow our way based upon our choices that we've had currently or in the past, choices that we've made in our lives. We just don't remember those choices. So it feels so painful and difficult when we're going through that. But if we're walking a spiritual path, then we have to say, there's a purpose for this, as painful as it may be. And as much as I don't see it, I need to call in, like on the telephone or a cell phone. God, help me. Help me to see. Guide me. What should I do in this situation? Because the call compels the answer. Since we are co-creators with God, God says, I can't do anything because this is my law of the universe. I can't do anything until you ask. If you ask and you're consistent and you really want to know, I can be able to get in, and the angels or the other masters of the universe can be able to get in there and help you with the situation. But you are the person who is the co-creator. And therefore, as a co-creator, you have to go through those experiences and learn from them and to come up higher to be able to now see those experiences from a different vantage point, as you're saying, up at the elevator.
You've put it so beautifully. I think the journey is evolution, is asking and asking for more, exploring and probing for more. And according to my belief, if you call God or the universe, there is, let's say, coordination starts to happen. So from that asking energy, from that times it's praise, it's wanting more. There are event horizons are front of us, small crumbs of information, or at times a session like this one where we explore situations, people who have a matching reference, they're looking for this information, they are matched up. And again, it's a small step toward that authenticity, that understanding that what if it was just a setup. It's almost like a level. And for this journey, you will have, again, find your way out and find your beingness as a co-creator. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry for interrupting you there, because I think that labyrinth of a maze is how people feel there at times. And we don't realize we can call for guidance in that maze to help it again quicker, or we can do it all by ourselves. That's what the Lord is teaching us. Is either you can do it by yourself and see what happens there, or you can call upon your higher spiritual guides and God, or whatever you want to call it, to say, help me through this situation. Help me to think differently about this situation. Help me to feel differently about this situation. What do you want for me to feel in this? Because usually God is love. He's not hatred. He's not belligerent. He is not a God of consternation, but actually he is consistently been one of love. We are the ones who put those qualities to him, not God, because he's very compassionate and very patient with us on planet Earth, with all the things that we're going through. And he allows us to experience certain things for us to be able to grow and gain greater mastery.
Yeah, even we are allowed to repeat those painful, traumatic events. And that's what most people do. Because of that imprint, as you said, that imprint that they have given, according to the rules of the game, I believe, the cross that they are carrying in some ways, and they have a way to drop that weight and really find their true version of self, that level of authenticity. And that's the journey. That's the most exciting journey. And I think Wayne Dyer had this beautiful two-liner. He says, if you knew who walked beside you all along, you would have peace. You were always being looked after as God is around, this beautiful energy. And just think about it like you were born on this planet and everything was given at the right time. You're still here with us if you're listening to us now.
all the things we've talked about has been really, really nice to help to understand how you're moving from that low self-confidence or self-worth or self-esteem, and how you've been able to find the road back home to your inner self and the beauty that exists within you through changing your mindset and maybe doing other things as well, certainly. And it's an evolving process. It's an ongoing process, and that's the fun of it all. If there was a kind of a phrase or word that you would like to leave with the seekers and listeners, what would it be?
I believe if you are a seeker, you need to work out to believe that change is possible. More specifically, possible for you. And if you got that far, then find someone who has done this journey and they are able to help others. And it has proof, evidence, reviews, videos, whatever it is. And just please follow the process. Don't walk down into the labyrinth path, because your mind can be a curse and your mind could be the solution. But take the shortcut, please, and don't waste 30, 40 years like myself.
Yeah. I mean, you said your mind could be the curse, and I was thinking also the mind could be a blessing you to understand who's the driver's seat. Yes, and that our mind is just a vehicle to help us to get connected to the higher selves. It's not the all and be all. It has its appropriate place. And how do we keep it in its appropriate place, knowing that we're tied into something greater than ourselves, through our soul and through the Christic qualities, what Jesus came to show us, or Buddha came to show us, how to emulate more of that. How can they reach you, Endre, if they wanted to reach out to you?
The easiest is my website. It's doctorofselfworth.com. That's DOCTOR, selfworth.com. And there is some information about how I help people, what's the method, very easy methods I'm pretty much using to help people. One of the 3 ebooks is called How to Discover Your Authentic Self Faster Than You Ever Thought Possible. It's definitely good for to start to learn about what I do and how I help. And there is more as well. You can use the newsletters, and you can have a chat with me if that's what you choose to do. And I don't know if I can help you. I always open my door for free session. If we come to that point that I guarantee result, I don't want you to spend money. Keep spending your money for things that do not work, do not deliver you the results that you're looking for, because I believe this self-development market is highly diluted, and it's not about delivering value, and that has to change.
Wow, that's nice to be able to give them an opportunity to connect with you and see, how it works out, or maybe it's not a good fit, and that's okay too. I think, the one thing that I have been very, heartfelt about is your genuineness and your desire wanting to have, and you've learned certain things, and you would like to maybe accelerate that process for other individuals by connecting to the authentic self of truly who they are. So seekers, listeners, I welcome you to reach out to Endre and hear more about him and go to his website as well. This whole conversation has been around this key aspect of how he has been able to overcome low self-esteem, which many people have on this planet. We're trying to figure out a way to kind of navigate that terrain to finding authentic purpose. And he's found that. And we wish you to find it as well. So bye for now. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.